Hello out there, guys. Welcome to another devotional on Hump Day. Great to see you guys again. And what are we going to talk about today? Well, I want to talk about, do we live our lives in fear or in faith? What do we have? Faith or fear? And, I've yet to meet a person that didn't have a momentary flicker of fear in their lives at one point or another. And most of us could probably say we've experienced fear multiple times in our lives, quite a bit in our lives. And so I'd have to ask you the question, what fears or fear do you have in your lives that's been haunting you? And what is it that you can do about it, do about those fears? I looked up what the top 5 fears were. And the survey says the number 1 is public speaking, number 2 is heights, number 3 is snakes, number 4 is flying, and number 5 is claustrophobic. Number 6 is zombies, so I'm limited it to 5 because I'm not afraid of zombies unless I'm at one. But that's the top 5. And believe it or not, I had the top 5. I've endured over my life those top 5 things in that order, pretty much. And but the number 1 is public speaking, and I'll get to that in a minute. How that has haunted me over my lifetime and what I have done to help combat it. Having fear is normal. Everybody has fear. As a matter of fact, it's inherent in us to be afraid of something that we should be afraid of. And our body goes into a fight or flight mode whenever we get into those situations. But fear is normal in the short term, but if fear stays there and in our lives for any long period of time, that's when it becomes an issue or a problem. And the first person to ever experience fear was Adam. Adam sinned, and when he sinned, he realized he was naked and he was afraid. Ooh, Naked and Afraid. Mom and I watch that show all the time. It's a great show. And they blur out the body parts, so it's okay to watch. But the Bible also consistently talks about fear, so much so that it talks about not being afraid, telling us not to be afraid about 365 times in the Bible. So fear is a common subject in the Bible. And so God wants us to be set free of fear. He wants that for us. How do we do that? Well, first I want to tell you a story. In Matthew 8, it talks about the story of where Jesus and the disciples were in a boat, and they went out and in this boat, and a storm came up. And it had to be a really massive storm, because these guys are fishermen, and these guys were fearing for their lives. They didn't want to die by shipwreck. They knew this storm could take them out and kill them. And so they feared for their lives. And during the storm, they decided to ask Jesus for help. But guess what? They found Jesus sleeping, and they woke him up. And they said, "Lord, save us. We don't want to die." And he did. He calmed the winds and he calmed the water. And then he says to them, "You have little faith. Why are you so afraid?" And the men were amazed that he could do what he did. Who is this guy that could calm the winds and calm the waves, is basically what they said. So, what did the disciples first do when they had trouble? They first went to the Lord. They woke him up and they asked him for help. And they really didn't have anything to worry about. They had Jesus in their boat. Well, guess what? We have Jesus in our boat. All we got to do is wake him up and ask him for help. I'll explain that in a minute. Back to my number one fear, public speaking. You know, I have always been afraid to speak in front of people. It's always been a fear of mine. I get this anxiety swelling up inside of me, and I can't breathe, and I like hyperventilate, and it's just a horrible experience for me, and always has been, and probably always will be. I'll never ever get over it until the day I die. And but what I have found in my life is I have found how I can cope with it, how I can live with it. And the way I do that is by living with Jesus. All I have to do is ask him, wake him up, and ask him to help me. That's all I got to do. And I have done that numerous times. And it has calmed me. It has given me confidence to go in. I'm still, worried about it, but I somehow managed to get through it. And so, in closing, I want to say, if you look at the disciples, what did they do? First thing they did was turn to Jesus. And when it comes to Jesus, Jesus never pushes into our lives. He doesn't do that. What he does is he waits for us, and when we summon him, when we ask him to help us, that's when he appears, and that's when he helps us. All we have to do is wake him up and ask him for help. So in closing, as I said before, when anxiety hits me for any of my fears, I wake him up. And I got to tell you, family, as I said before, God is in the boat with us. He's there. Jesus is there. He's waiting for us to ask him for help. So don't stare at the storm. Focus on him. And if we do that, and only if we do that, if we look at him, we can be set free from our fear. Well, that's all I had. Thank you guys for showing up on Hump Day. Keep on being awesome out there. Love you guys. Talk to you later.